Hear ye, the end of the world is upon us. Is that what you feel sometimes? That you need to escape reality? There's a good reason for that. Society is crumbling. It is fracturing. That's what we're witnessing. Do you ever consider off-grid living? I spoke to a man who has. Hello, you 4.5 million wonders, you glorious creatures of light. I spent a bit of time speaking to Bradley Garrett, who's an expert in survivalism, off-grid living, creating new systems and communities. For one of his books, he went and lived deep with survivalists and different people who set up communities outside of the mainstream, off-grid. More and more of us are considering communal living as a potential way out, different systems of organisation. Are you thinking about it? I know I'm thinking about it, and Bradley Garrett is too. This conversation originally took place in my podcast on Luminary, Under the Skin. Subscribe to it if that's your thing. If not, watch this video to the very end. It gives you a flavour of what it's like, and also, most importantly, it gives us a bit of insight into what it's like if you actually make that jump into living on the outside. Stay to the end because I need your comments and insight.
What do you think underwrites the anxiety that you write about in Bunker, Building for the End Times? What do you think, what's causing the fear?
I think it's a lot of things, but it can be traced back probably to the Cold War and, the original existential threat of nuclear war. The possibility of the complete extinction of our species was something that, I think human beings hadn't really comprehended in the modern age until that time. And it's something that stuck with us. And of course, now we've got an increasing frequency and severity of natural disasters as a result of the climate crisis. And all of it, in my mind, is connected to a sense of fragility that we all have about society, about the world that we've built, about technology, about capitalism. Right? We all know that this is a fragile artifice that could crumble at any moment. And I think that the anxiety is very deep-seated in that sense.
Do you think it is a fragile artifice?
I do. Yeah, I think that we've been operating under an illusion, particularly since the introduction of neoliberal ideologies, from the 1980s on. And, we've been operating under this illusion that we can continue to endlessly expand and consume and densify, and it only takes a small crisis for us to realize that that's a fiction that we've built. And we all live in fictions, of course. Most often the fictions we create for ourselves. But this is a social fiction. It's a societal fiction. It's a civilizational fiction. And I think all of us on a deep level know that there's something about this that isn't quite real. And in fact, the pandemic that we've all just gone through, for me, was more real than most of the things I've experienced in my life, because we had to confront the possibility of mortality in a way that we're not used to doing. We had to confront the possibility that, the infrastructures that we depend upon could just collapse.
It's interesting what you're saying. Everything you're saying is, I've already got so many questions. One is that you could assume that the function of a culture might be to help us deal with truth, to present us with truths and help us to process them culturally and perhaps presumably as a result of that term, communally. But it seems that actually the way our culture functions is to distract you from truth, to prevent you from realizing truth, for example, around mortality, the hopelessness of aspirations that you're attempting to resolve through, self-beautification and acquisition and stuff like that. Culture can't ever allow you to arrive there at that kind of despair that often arrives when people have a personal crisis. People on their deathbed aren't saying, I wish I'd spent more time acquiring goods. People aren't having near-death experiences where they realise that they should have spent more money on sort of face cream or whatever. What we're mostly realising is that truth is something that's being somewhat concealed from us. That Cold War thing too, mate, that you said about, I remember I grew up, I reckon I'm probably a couple of years older than you. That's my guess. And like I grew up at a time where like that was still a reality. You know, learning about like the nuclear, like the potential of nuclear Armageddon. And someone once said to me, in a sense, what does it matter if there's an apocalypse? Because there is for each of us anyway. Whether like why does it seem to have more impact on you as an individual, knowing that what you're confronted is sort of a global annihilation rather than local or personal annihilation? What's the sort of difference there? And the other thing that sort of struck me is when you said about like, you know, about reality, that sometimes when I was younger and I would think about violence, that somehow like a violent confrontation strips away all of the various edifices that we voluntarily or otherwise live behind. And like if someone says, I'm going to kill you, or punches you in the face, like now you are like, oh fuck yeah, stuff like that can just happen. Like it doesn't matter that I've learned these things, you know. Where is it now?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the doomsday preppers or survivalists that I've been spending years living with have, you know, they explained to me that in some sense they were looking forward to a disaster because it ruptures the illusion. The bunker, you know, whether you think about that as a physical space or a kind of metaphor, is a space for recreation. It's a space of rebirth, essentially, right? I mean, if you don't emerge from the bunker, it's a tomb. So the bunker is a space of rebirth, but it's also a space of control. And because so many aspects of our lives now are not within our control, I think that that's something that people seek. You know, they want to create a space where they know they can control the parameters of their existence. That moment of being in the bunker, you know, surrounded by the things that you've put together, self-sufficient, cut off from the world, is precisely akin to that moment of violence that you're describing, right? It's a moment of radical confrontation with our existence, you know, that where the veneer has been stripped away and we're back to the basics. And I think, you know, a lot of us crave that on some level also because, you know, society and civilization originally was built upon a premise of mutual understanding, of cooperation, of human connection with the natural world, right? And that now has been occluded by these social, economic, and political structures that are fundamentally unsatisfying on some level. And so what many of the preppers told me was that the disaster is a moment for rebirth, for recreation, for reconnection. And so, I mean, strangely, there is an anxiety there underlying things, but there's also a hopefulness that when the disaster comes, it's a moment for us to confront ourselves and potentially to rebuild the world. And this is a perfect moment to be talking to you because, you know, we're in that moment now. I mean, we have an opportunity to reshape things after going through a global disaster that's killed, almost 4 million people now. We have a moment to build a different kind of world. Whether we're going to rise up to that challenge, I'm not sure. But it's certainly a time of change. And that's exactly what these preppers had been telling me long before the pandemic had hit.
Well, do you think you could handle it out there? What kind of commune would you set up? How would you like to live? Let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell because I need to have direct contact with you. It's vitally important. Sign up to my mailing list as well so I can tell you exactly what I'm up to, what I'm thinking, what I'm reading, and where I'm performing live, which I'll be doing from January to May next year. And I'd love you to come along. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at that cheeky little guy. And if you need to learn a little bit more about spirituality, sign up to my side channel and watch this video. It's about personal development, personal growth, and all that kind of lovely stuff. Stay free.